or into the cloud.
That are unmuted.
We're on the air. Okay. Thank you for the feedback on the website. I'm dialing that in. I do everything. So it's a little slow since it's a linear process, and I can't say to my web guy, do this, do that, and I need it done by tomorrow, because that's just me talking to myself. So with a lot of moving parts, you know, I'm doing my best on that. But ideally, we'll have about a 24-hour, maybe 30-hour turnaround where I can download the videos, populate the page, add the homework, and any other support materials. Cool. See. Thank you also for your feedback and questions regarding some subject matter you'd like covered. Two things that I will add to this today, and since most of you are in both classes, I figure we can just have one continuous 4 hours of material in each of these sessions, with a focus on more level 1 fundamentals earlier on, and then some deeper diving in the second class. And what I'd love for you to do while I'm talking about these two topics is to populate the chat with anything you're interested in going deeper on. Okay. Some requests were to look at Trager in the context of massage therapy, and in the context of I'd like to phase out my massage practice, and how do I, or what strategies can I use to move into a Trager practice while honoring the expectation of my client base, but also honoring myself as I want to do more of this work. Okay. I'll speak to that in a minute. And then for some of you, you were interested in hearing a little bit about some of the points that Dean touched on in his Gamma Motor System talk, right, from last week, last Thursday. And I do invite you to get that video. It's something beautiful to have on hand, you know, kind of an exhaustive exploration of what I would call our functional nervous system, proprioception, and, you know, again, more than you might need to know from a practical sense in terms of working with people and explaining things, but it's all there, and all in Dean eloquence, and he's a Fred Astaire with words, so he really covers the material well. And of course, there's lots of gems, and I wrote those down. So what I'll do is I'll share some of them. You can take notes if you'd like, but I'll document some headlines and send out some other materials, or post that to the web pages that you have access to. You might have found that on my website in general, but also on the level 1 page, there's a really great 6-page Trager synopsis that Dean had written back around 2005, maybe. I don't know, but it's just perfect. And I share that with everybody, medical professionals and the like. Really helpful. So there are those two things that we'll look at. All right. Accumulating, folks. And And before I get into those two topics, just real quick, I want to know how many people would like some Mentastics in these sessions, or are the Friday sessions keeping you connected to that? Or would you like more body work detail? You can put that in the chat. And I'm happy to give you my take on, I think I wrote that kind of some structure down on how I can approach Mentastics. And you'll also find that there's a document that I share on the level 1 page, I think. It could be on the older one, that is the PowerPoint that I used as a structure to teach the physical therapists in Sri Lanka. And there I kind of break down approaches to Mentastics, okay? And I think that's a clear example of things. And you can kind of pigeonhole your favorite approaches into that schematic, right? Or create a new using that schematic. And I think I put that little bit of that in the homework piece. Speaking of the homework piece, in my main account, I set up breakout rooms, but I don't have that button available to me right now. So I'll look at that for the next session, okay? I wanted to have that be part of things today, so you could share a little bit about your homework explorations. So we'll add that in. All right. Let me just check here. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm seeing in terms of some of the questions that popped up real quick about the Mentastics, in general, working with physical therapists, they're already used to exercises, giving people homework, right? The key is kind of making kind of contexting it and encouraging compliance, right? So I find that in any of those categories, whereas in physical therapy, they give you a sheet with the pictures of people laying on their back, taking their knee across, and it's kind of an isolated approach to things like an exercise routine or a stretching routine, that our ability to context movement exercises so they fit into somebody's world will help them to actually do the work, because it's the homework and leveraging those other 22 and a half hours in their day that make this model so good. And because you don't need to, or because you can put this into your walk, put this into how you wash dishes, how you sit at your desk, all of those things, people just build it into their lives, and they don't have to, actually more importantly, they don't have to do it as an offline exercise, but most importantly, they start to change how they engage with the world around them. And they can turn their world into their rehab center, and every movement and every gesture can start to, or they can recalibrate or redefine who they are in relationship to their world. And I explain it to everybody that way. Like, here's the thing, with the new feeling on the inside, now everything you do is wide open. You took the lid off. If it feels the same, you're in your default pattern. If it feels a little odd or weird, you're changing a pattern. And giving them those tools. And for physical therapists, they kind of get the interim exercises, right? And physical therapy would be probably yield more results if people did their homework more regularly. So again, I find that if I'm selling this to physical therapists, it's like, hey, you have a way to work with the body and the mind and movement without taking somebody out of their world. You can do this on the fly. You know, driving in the car, where the weight of my elbows, right? Sky hook, so you're not just stuck in the seat. And you can go, I would list all of the metastics that you like to use, you're comfortable with. And then how would you explain it to your client? And then how would I want to frame this to kind of meet the language or the understanding of a PT or an OT? Cool. All right. So in terms of working with massage therapists or as a massage therapist and getting a client to maybe consider Trager and give it some time, you know, two or three sessions for them to really see what's happening. I'll start with a phrase that my friend Laura Lynn, really wonderful longtime practitioner, uses all the time. She's a massage therapist and longtime Trager practitioner, but when her clients say, look, I like some deep tissue, and she'll say, well, do you want to say ow, or do you want me to go deep? And they're like, so people associate ow with deep tissue, but Trager goes so much deeper. Okay, so I think it's important to get them to understand the difference, right? And just that curious question sets off some curiosity and may more easily create buy-in from the client. And then that opens up the conversation to, well, I can dig into your muscles, but this other work I do actually speaks to the mechanisms that are behind the activity of this muscle you want me to dig into. And I can invite that muscle to relax out so I don't need to dig into it. That kind of a thing. And I think I mentioned last week that my dad had 4 shoulder replacements, but 5 surgeries. And he was one of those guys. He's like, oh, you can dig in as much as you want. I've got a high pain threshold. And I'm like, I don't even know how to go there. Right? So, and had incredible impact. Now that said, I have developed this work in my own way where I do get in to things a little deeper than maybe classic Trager hands. And I'm happy to explore that. You know, it's in the sense of the anchors that I use. Okay, where I've gone in a little deeper around the vertebra and work with the rib cage a little bit. So in essence, kind of working the entire spine while in supine, but I've got a hand underneath there. I also have a couple things that I do with the hip that use movement of the leg, a bent leg, while I'm in working the hip rotators. And I found that for massage clients, that can feel like I'm doing something massagey, but in my head, and what my hands are up to are everything but that. So we'll play around with these ideas. You'll see me do some things, and that's pretty much what, sure, Marty. And again, that's a way I've gotten around things. I think too, that in terms of the back, that really developing the hula, and I'll show you some alternatives to the hula to get the scapula, to get the shoulder girdle muscles to relax, and getting underneath the scapula can also feel a little more massagey, but again, you can do it without the effort, okay? So again, a key thing is that if we go deeper, we don't want to go harder in ourselves, because then we change what we're communicating. And that's the difference between the two styles of work. So we want to keep it free, easy, play with weight, but we also want to maintain our kind of Trager integrity internally, right? Show with thumbs. Hey, we got thumbs. Okay, so we all have thumbs. Perfect. Okay. So the next thing, I'll just one comment in particular that Dean said regarding the gamma motor system, which basically involves motor units, muscle spindles or intrafusal muscle fibers, and the Golgi tendon organs, right? That as I have a conscious intention to move, these mechanisms are recording that data coming through this system, this gamma motor system, weighing in against my intention and saying, yeah, that meets the intention, or maybe it's a little off, and it continually refines. So I mean, we're just like, it's unbelievably exquisite, and I can't even imagine how many data points are coming in for me to convey softness, right? And to develop that kind of motor control. And this comes into the mentastics, okay? He said, my intention is my one conscious control over my movement and my unconscious. So it's conscious intention versus unconscious execution of movement. So if we are not self-aware, and we do not have a well-defined and refined intent, meaning getting the message right, like rather than I just want to reach for this, but I would like to reach for this in a soft, fluid, effortless way, if we don't participate, then we're stuck with our unconscious execution of that movement, just an impulse, and with that will be that movement through the lens of every movement experience I've ever had. Right? So the idea being that after the session, now you can explain this to clients that we've just flooded your nervous system with lots of new messages about ease and lightness and how open and mobile and free you can feel. And it will be through your conscious intent and movement exploration, drawing on this feeling experience and using some visualization and some auto-suggestion that will help you grow that into your new default muscular setting or something like that. But that's how to tie the two together and to sell this compliance with the homework. The people, and you might give them 3 or 4 things and tell them to pick one and get real good at that. Because once they have one thing, you know, and they're not confused about, well, should I do this now or that now? But have them get good at one and maybe weigh in intuitively on what might be the high leverage point. Like if they correct this, then these other things might like kind of self-correct. Yeah. So that's an approach to that. And again, it's leveraging the idea behind the gamma motor system. Okay. In that conversation, I responded to this talk with some information that I got back in 1992 at the San Diego Trager conference. There was a neuroscientist or a neurosurgeon there that worked in a pain clinic, Sharp Medical Hospital or Medical Center in San Diego. His name was Dr. David Hubbard. And he was a Travel trigger point enthusiast, but he actually employed Trager in his clinic to help chronic pain patients wean themselves off of medication and to avoid surgery. And he admitted then that the hardest part of his job was to convince people they didn't need to be cut open. Okay? But what was really powerful about his presentation, and he felt that we knew better than anybody else what I'm going to explain and how to work with it. That originally when they did wire EMG, they put the needle in the muscle belly that's presenting as painful, it would come up as electrically silent. And this was really frustrating for fibromyalgia patients because the pain was true for them. But there was a phase, at least that I recall loosely, and I wasn't steeped in that world just yet, but that it was fibromyalgia was all in your head, right? Or chronic fatigue, all in your head. But what they were able to do was, when the needles got more refined, they were able to put the needle into the muscle spindle, or what he referred to as the trigger point. Right? So this is the length receptor of the muscle belly. And once in there, they found that it was off the charts active at a low level, but a chronic contraction. And they pulled from the fluid in there. Dean explains that the muscle spindle, there's a lot of fluid. They pulled out some fluid, and they found a sympathetic nervous system chemical marker, 5-hydroxydopamine. Okay, now what that meant was that your stress shows up in your muscle tissue, right? So stress and tension can cause this, or caffeine, or alcohol. They did some other studies. But this tied fight, flight, or freeze to muscle pain, and also to muscle contraction. And if you think about it, in Dean's book, Job's Body, he covers something called the FENN effect, F-E-N-N effect. And it shows this really nice little chart about muscles at rest draw down about 20% of our energy. Now, if you have low-level chronic contracture systemically or specifically, if certain parts of the body are better repositories of stress, shoulders, trapezius, low back, psoas, then maybe 10% more energy is going to just keep your muscles tight. So 30% of your calories are going to keeping yourself in a stressful situation or a stressful muscle tone and in pain. So it's energy to hold yourself in pain. And if that gets compounded, right, it can just keep going up. So now you got a leak in the hose, right? Like, where's all my energy going? Or let me do it again. Where's all my energy going, right? So we got to get to here. But most people, frozen shoulder is taking up some energy of people. So it's kind of laid out nicely to show that we need to get to the mind too. And that's why I love where science is at right now and where we're so deep in this work already. It's second nature to us, right? But what I'll do, I have an image in a research synopsis of Dr. Hubbard's, that shows an example of this, working with some trigger points in the trapezius. And then I have some bullet points because I use this in my yoga anatomy class. And I'll attach that onto the page, your level 1, level 2 pages. Okay, so you'll have that slide. And now Dr. Hubbard, and this research was in Spine magazine, or Spine Quarterly, or whatever that magazine was back in the 90s, but it was published. And this information has been out there for a long time. He's now doing something completely different. But if you do look up Dr. David Hubbard, you can find a little more information about this research. Because I believe on his site, he's got a list of papers that he's published. Right? And I've had this for I can't believe I still have it 28 years later. But it's in a file somewhere, but I still have this particular slide. Okay, but again, and this is something you can explain to your clients of why you need to reach the mind too, especially for the massage clients, so you don't have to dig into that point that makes them say out. You want to get to the mind, so it goes to the mechanism that's creating that little, oh, I got this knot in my muscle. That kind of idea. When you can lay out that kind of a schematic and then say that you don't need to say out to go deep, but we're going to teach your body something new, and then you're going to reinforce that through repetition. Again, it's about creating the buy-in. And I think a lot of people right now are looking for any kind of approach that's going to move them forward with their own participation rather than just keeping them looping. Okay. All right. Quick question, does everybody have water balloons? Okay, we got some thumbs there. All right, perfect. What I might do, because I need to fill mine too. I forgot to fill them because I got out of my meeting late. But real quick, that's good. Cool. Let's just take a moment, take some inventory. Is there anything you want to put in the chat that you would like me to know about right now before we take a couple-minute break and fill water balloons? Oh, I have a plastic. That's fine, Marty. Oh, we only need one. So what I'd like to do, oh, okay, we only need one. Oh, and you have Quarantina. Quarantina. One of the participants has a big model body that she's named Quarantina. So I think the bear was the impetus for that. Super cool. So we'll pause, and there was a couple folks wanted to know how, in the absence of a body, do I keep my Trager hands? So we're going to have a conversation about Trager hands, because there is actually so much you can do to stay close to that feeling. And you can use this in your own self-mentastics. So we'll look at that, okay? And if you don't have a TheraBand, anything stretchy or elastic can work. And if you don't have it, I'll at least model a few scenarios that you can play with, okay? Awesome. Dorothy, I'm not familiar with John Sarno's work. myofascial release guy, or can you add one more layer to that? Mind over back pain. Oh gosh, well, let's just talk about it a little bit. I have somebody that, oh sweet, okay, so what she's saying in the chat is that there's a recent documentary about his work, which, I mean, I'd love for something to come out about this work now, where there's a lot of blah, blah, blah about, well, it ticks off that box, this box, that box, and it feels great. That kind of a thing. But the whole reason for a lot of the mindfulness out there, okay? If you look at the cognitive process, okay, you have cognition, or wait, I'll reverse my hands so it looks better for you guys. Okay, there's cognition, then there's recognition and interpretation, okay? Then the body creates the chemistry or the physiology of happy, sad, whatever. And then there's a feeling generated. And the feeling is either a good feeling or a not so good feeling. And that triggers craving or aversion. We're a binary system. And then there's reaction, right? Either you want more of that feeling that you created in your internal process, okay, or you don't, and then you repeat the behavior. Or you don't like what you felt, you get that knot in your system, and you push against that, right? So it could be yelling or, you know, any number of things. So the idea with the mindfulness, understanding that the external event is neutral. But when we assign meaning to things, and it goes through our lens of experience, then we create what we, how we're seeing it, okay? So understanding that physiological cascade, you know, if I have back pain, I might want to look in my world and find all the triggers that might, you know, it's like, it could be the memory of this, it could be a memory of that, it could be any number of things. Could be loud noises because I got into a car accident and I had that startle reflex. I'm working with an EMT that rolled in an ambulance, right? And I mean, she's triggered, right? So we got to get the mind out of that. And certainly the work can do it, but her own ability to de-escalate, to notice when the breath shifts because they're triggered, it could be positive or negative, but then getting into some kind of a breathing and a mindfulness to come into the present moment and find equanimity, kind of wipe out the recognition interpretation part of it, so that the next phase of the physiology production isn't through the experience. It's more through, oh, I'm present. I feel that first surge of excitement, but I'm back to my breath. I start to de-escalate. I'm exhaling, so my blood alkalinity goes, right? And all of a sudden, any of this might go to this, especially if you do a body scan. So one of the things that Trager does is it takes out the slack between the mind and the body. Okay, so as we're working with the body, people are starting to feel themselves. And we flood them with a very different sensual experience that helps them better leverage kind of any of this mindfulness exercise. So, I mean, you could do mindful movement, right? Where I've been using embodiment exercises, or dynamic mindfulness. You could get the breathing and the movement and the scanning with shifting weight. So, I mean, I would say that it's pretty much, you know, it could be a similar model. If we understood what he's got going on, and I'll take a look and I'll just say, oh yeah, we fit in here, there, in this way, and maybe have it for next time. Yeah. so let's pause. We'll do balloons, and we'll come back and do some exercises. Okay? All right. Hey folks, can you hear me? Is everybody back? Okay, got a couple, all right. Okay. Super cool. Okay, so Linnea's here with me. You may see her in this one view there. And I'm gonna switch. We're gonna together play with some water balloons. Okay, and I'll explain how I teach somebody that's new to water balloons. All right, but from a practitioner standpoint, I want you to just kind of draw on really familiar experiences you've already had. Okay, this might feel like a head, this might feel like a leg, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to go through creating or working with weight, shimmering, compression, also bringing heightened awareness into mentastics. Okay, and then also working on this Trager hand, right? Working on, rather than doing the fingertips, we kind of bend at that first knuckle, right? The avocado sandwich kind of approach to things. And the water balloons are really helpful for that. Okay, and I'll try to step up to the camera so you have close-ups of what my hands are actually up to, or I'll bring it closer in general. One caveat here, we have a tornado warning. So there's like some heavy rain present and some dark clouds come by. So the light may vary a little bit. So I apologize for that. If it gets really dark in here, then the building's gonna topple over, but I will go get a light. Okay. All right, I'm gonna switch screens. Everything cool? Okay. So in general, we're going to start with weighing. Okay. So this idea of coming underneath the head. Okay. And just letting your hands rest underneath this weight. And just notice how the balloon just rests on the individual fingers. You might even notice if you draw and see your hands. Okay.
Yeah, we can't see your hands.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. Different camera. All right, so I know why. Is that better? Can you see my hands now? No? Can you see my hands now? Okay, great. Okay, now things make sense. Okay, so I'm coming underneath the balloon. And I'm just, fingertips can be together, or sometimes I like to interlace them just a little bit, the fingertips, the first knuckle. And I let my hands rest on the table. Kind of stand this way. And then you can actually just lift the index fingers and feel how the water balloon moves. Maybe play around with the middle finger there, third finger, ring finger, and pinky. Okay. Now generally, when we're positioning the hands to mobilize the head, there's typically the first two fingers, the pointer finger and the second finger, are on the occipital triangle, and then the second two fingers, ring finger and pinky, are on the occiput, so more on the bone. Okay, and that's just a general placement, but that can vary depending on hand size and head size. Okay, so for right now, I want to feel into, I'll say, the tissue, so the balloon, and just notice that in a fluid system, the least amount of input creates some movement. So there is effect. Okay, so you can start to understand, wow, when I do just that little thing and I relax the muscle belly, I'm transmitting something. Okay, because sometimes you might have, that might be how you're working. So it's good to start to work on refined individual finger movement, etc., because you might need to work with that in either heightened pain or restriction, painful restriction. Okay. Next order of business, we're just going to play with weight. Okay. So we're just going to roll onto the back of the right hand and feel the weight pour across the palm. And then we're going to roll the other direction. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm just going to go back and forth. Back and forth. To keep my hands alive and awake, to experience the transfer of weight through the fingers and then into the palm. And you can buy different size balloons, so you can get a bigger balloon, so you can play around with different size heads, different weight. And at a level 1, if you get this really good, they'll start to let go of their neck. Beautiful. Now what we're going to do from here, you can play around with your speed, but now we're going to play around with this idea of working the hand. And now the free hand is just going to be there to help keep the balloon from rolling away. And that's going to help your client's nervous system know that you're not going to let go of their head. Right? Because necks are all about trust and safety. So this is another way, draw the weight up, let the weight go down. Draw the weight up, let the weight go back down. Yeah. And what this can help with, if you have months between a body, then you're going to start to, you're going to keep it'll help keep the motion smooth. So you're not just flapping the head up, and missing all of the detail in between. It's all about keeping it easy. So here's one side of the head, and that gentle nodding that we do. Practice interlacing the fingers, and then just switching to the other side. See that detail? You know, you can play around with, you know, maybe there's an emphasis on the front of the fingers. So you can, right now what I'm doing, I'm just really moving the balloon with my first two fingers. You know, maybe I put my hand in the wrong place, but for a couple moves, I want to emphasize the second two fingers. So now I have my second two fingers playing with the movement. But this will help you enhance your dexterity in context. Playing with the weight. And you can always pause. Cool. Now the next thing, from a just weighing, if I bend my knees and I come up, and just from moving my knees, I can feel how much a fluid container bounces in my movement. As long as I'm not rigid with my hands, but I can create an effect from moving from my feet. Okay? Now what's important about this is that all of our movements are setting up that baseline rhythm, getting the system in motion. Again, it's that lulling, fluid, really familiar nervous system impression, kind of womb-like a lot of people report, right? So just something as easy as bouncing from my feet. Okay? And you can use balloons with clients to get them to feel how weight shifts from side to side. And illustrate to them that even a simple exercise is going to have impact for these very reasons, right? We're mostly water, the muscle system, your musculature. I almost did a Popeye, my muscles. This is what we're really after. That a muscle at rest is a water balloon, right? This is what the mentastic is all about, right? You want like things to be really floppy. All right, so we have this. This is playing with the weight. This is transferring the weight. Okay. You can shift out. And a couple minutes a day with the water balloons. Maybe just have a little tub. Keep the water balloon in it. Have a place where you have a towel so they don't explode. And in training, I had 12 water balloons. It had these really cool paint designs on them. We took a break and put them in a tub. They became one big water balloon. They all had to explode. Yeah, it was a real mess. Anyway, so now let's come into the slurping hand, the slurping of the tissue. So say we have a muscle belly. We're going to jiggle the thigh a little bit. If I let my palm rest on this balloon, okay, if I squeeze from the fingertips, I don't really gather up the balloon very well. Right? There's a lot of empty space underneath my fingers. But if I draw from this knuckle and almost kind of like octopus up, I can get my fingers really connected to this balloon to the point where I can lift it. And this is the hand that we're going to start to do some jiggling with. So from the front, you can see that just with this shape in my hand, I can start to create this little toggle in the muscle belly. Right? So this is going to be, and then I can take my hand off, find the rhythm again, find the rhythm again, find the rhythm again, find the rhythm again. That kind of an idea. I can even get really subtle with it. Right, so creating vibration. This can help if you're doing a lot of jaw work, right? You're working around the face. If you've ever taken Dean's jaw class, you know, there's a lot of this, you know, working with the smaller muscles, masseter, these areas, this is a real great way to develop that, kind of a tighter amplitude or vibratory quality. And you want to dribble it. You want to play with that weight. So that is another way to come at this. Okay. And do both hands. Right? You'll find that one's maybe a little more dexterous. You can create the feelings. I always go to my left hand because that's my detail hand. My right hand's more of it can do close to the left, but not quite, but it can go for days. And that's from a drumming thing. But the same idea here. You can even, you can move it with just the hand. You can bend your knees. You can lock your knees and see how things translate. But you can start to explore the relationship of whole body movement. If I come in and do something like this, where I'm leaning my weight back to create the traction as opposed to just my arm, I can feel that in the balloon. Because the surface of the balloon is almost like skin. All right, so there's the balloon run. Okay, good. All right. So, any questions on, let's see, I think I have, compression. One more thing. So, we're familiar with this idea of compression, where I'm just sinking my weight in and allowing the body to say that's plenty, or when you're kind of really taking out the slack of the structure. Now, we're working with the balloon. If I sunk my weight onto the balloon, it would explode out each side, or just in general. But what I can do is lean in and allow my palm to feel the surface tension of the balloon. And when I feel it it shifts from being soft and elastic to starting to feel tight, I stop. So now I'm kind of calibrating myself to the balloon. And it might be my third finger that picks up the stretch that I kind of perceiving. Maybe it's my palm. But I can go in and just know that I'm safe. I can even go in a little bit and then practice some bouncing, right? Because this can be really good with the abdomen, right? To get this feeling very fluid, right? And this kind of sonar impulse into the viscera will also help. It's just going to go right into all the organs, right? So if you have some spasticity in the colon, right? This kind of a thing, or if you got just the muscles in the fascia that's just holding everything in place, you start creating waves in that, and you might create the right message to invite the whole thing to go, right? And then they might, come with a nice breath. Plus, if you're stirring the soup of the viscera, it's going to go up underneath the diaphragm. You're going to get to the psoas a little bit. And it's a nice way to, again, develop your skill set. Yeah. So I really invite you to get curious and adventurous about this. Play around with it. But this is a beautiful way to keep your hands alive and well in a COVID world. Feel free to type something into the group chat if need be, and we're going to move on to bands. love does. I'll take that. Okay, so what I have here are therabands of different thickness. And the idea here is that when we're working with the body, creating traction, things of this nature, that the body's elastic, but in different ways. Different tissue has different elastic qualities, right? So one of the things here, I'm just going to give this to Linnea, and just allow your arm to relax. Put it down, please. I'm going to move the table out of the way. Let's see. Yeah, I just want to get this into the. Okay, so if she's standing there with her arm down by her side and just leaving it relaxed, if I just start to move the band, I can get her arm to start moving. And if I let go of it, her arm drops down. So this is action in the distance, right? If I lean my weight back, her arm comes forward. If I let go, her arm drops down. If I lean back with a little bit of a wave, I have her. But here's the thing. I'm using a rather loose TheraBand. So my movement isn't really directly translating right into her. There's a little bit of a lag, a little bit of slop, and it gets there, and it's okay, but I have to accommodate the looser handle, if you will, handle at a distance. So, a couple things. We got, this one's a little thicker. I'm just going to have her relax her arm again. Okay, and I'll be relatively close. And I'm going to lean, this time, I'm going to take out the slack. And I have a lot more control of her arm because the band has less elasticity. So now when I lean my weight back, I have like direct translation. Cool, there we go. So now it's a direct translation. It's really immediate, and I can be a little more detailed in what I want to say to her arm from a distance through my own body movement. Right? So now shifting my weight translates right into her system. So what these bands can do is help you dial in your body usage so that you can work with more accurately with translating your body movements into a sensation for them, whether it's through an arm or a leg or in general. And then there's thicker bands, and some of these, it's going to come into here. So now if I'm working, say I'm working on a psoas release. Now this might not translate too well because the arm doesn't create the same kind of resistance. But if I were to stick this on a doorknob and lean back, I'd have to use a lot of weight to get a little distance. And that's also good to play around with, right? Because I want to use my body and the larger muscles to engage her and take out the slack rather than my arm string. I don't want to be like yanking this way. So I invite you to get a tuck band or a pretty elastic one that challenges you to play with your weight. And in this way, then, you take all of that, put it together, and you can do these fantastics with your clients to create waves. You can invite them to grab some too, play around with this idea. But this will also help you keep your body attuned to the qualities that we're kind of looking for on the table. So that when you have a leg in your hand, you're like, oh yeah, I lean back, leaning back, or if you're working prone, you're water skiing, jump roping, that kind of thing. Up, quarantine. Just checking my chat here. Okay, awesome. Thank you for your feedback, folks. So this is the idea that in the absence of a body, ooh, I have a couple more things. You guys remember this little toy? Okay, I'll move this back in and then we'll put the water balloons away and then we'll get to the table. So nothing's happening here other than this is the importance of taking out the slack. I'm pulling on the string, but the dog's not going anywhere, right? I got to take out the slack to get the action. So it'll be important for you to continue to develop your techniques for slack, okay, or elongation, okay? And I'll show you a couple ways on the body to gather the tissue so that when you sink your weight, you'll have their slack out a little bit under their hands, this kind of thing. So that's what the dog shows you. And then the last two pieces, I would absolutely say, you know, there was a comment earlier about, like, so I'm this adult guy and I've got some stuffed animals around the house, right? So in the exercise, what is soft? Right, we pass out really soft things and they make you feel into tissue or into the object differently and you relate to it differently. So I would gather up soft things and feel what is soft. The flip side of that, find some slime. It's got a really weird quality to it, okay? And feel this, right? Because that's a whole other, this is some old slime, so it's gonna stick to my hands. But this is also part of that feeling exercise that we do with client, or do in a level 1 to indicate or to awaken qualities of contact, right? Like, this is why, like, you put slime in your hands and you're like, ooh, but if you put silk in your hands, you're like, ah, okay, that feels really good. That I want more of. Okay? So that's just more to illustrate the breadth of what the hands can pick up. Okay. Cool. Questions on this piece? Okay, folks, I'm back up here now. Any questions before we move on? Okay, I see some radio silence, so that's a good thing. All right. Thank you, Ada.
I can really tell when I'm pulling, because Quarantina moves all across the table, and I'm like, oh, I'm applying way too much pressure.
Force. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, no, it's Marty, thank you so much for that. There's a huge difference between pulling and gathering her so that you can work with her.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell immediately.
Great. And that's an inanimate, not to talk unkindly about her, but she's inanimate.
Yeah.
But you can still feel the quality. It translates into any structure.
Yeah. Well, it's what I told. Yeah. What I told you last time is that I've always worked too hard. So she's a great,
right. Okay.
She's really great for me to see, oh, what's it feel like to pull the slack when I'm not working hard?
Mm-hmm.
Because
and
she's
you can
not
use
moving.
your body to move her more and not have to work any harder with your hands.
Yeah.
So the message at the hand contact, and you got to remember, wherever your hands are, that's where their mind is at, right? So if they feel you gripping tighter, the body starts going, wait, things are getting tighter, right? But if they don't change, then there's a neutrality that allows wherever that mind has gone to, if it's in that hypnagogic state, you're not going to disrupt that. You can go deeper, but because your contact never changes, because you're using your entire body to create that movement, you're going to drop them into yet another layer of yum.
Yeah, I can see her chest beginning to move. Thank you.
You got it. I'm just going to wash my hands, folks, and then we'll do some stuff at the table. Sound good? Marva, I can't hear you if you're talking into the, oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
I can
was
now,
just-
yeah, thank you.
My husband just came in and I was explaining to him that I had never made a water balloon. So
Oh, wow, all right.
I tried to blow it up and then put the water in, and I have water everywhere.
Consider this a rite of passage, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, again, when you're filling the water balloons, you can play with small ones. They'll be like biceps. You can make them a little larger. They'll be more like thigh tissue, or the small ones can also be like calves, or like playing bass, and you can get the, you know, the feel in the fingers. And the
Yeah.
larger ones definitely can feel like the head.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got about, I want to do a little Q&A at the end, but in terms of what you would like to see right now, I know in the level 1 last time, we did supine. I can go through a couple things prone, if you'd like, or if there's something in general that people want to see now with like maybe the next 15 or 20 minutes. And since we've had this longer conversation about the details in this session, we can do the body, the complete body next one.
I do have a question. I
go ahead.
mean, the population that I work with is essentially seniors, you know, and I mean, a lot of people are kyphotic and, you know, anyway, I still struggle with, you know, people, they don't want to be without a face rest, you know, a lot of times. And so anyway, I still kind of struggle with that. But, you know, if I'm using a face rest, then that really messes with my mechanics of where the person is on the table, you know. So anyway.
What I can go into, I'll tell you what we'll do right now. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'll go through some bolstering for sidelying. The
Oh.
sidelying is a great way, and then then I can get deeper into sidelying probably in session 3. But a really nice way for some fundamental stuff might be a nice way for everybody to see that in the next 15 or 20 minutes.
Excellent.
Wow, I got some thumbs there, because my whole client base too, as soon as they lay down on their belly and turn their head, it's like they undo everything.
Exactly.
Because it's just not comfortable for them.
Yeah.
All right, let me get the camera set up, and I'll dig into get the pillows out, because I want you to see the bolstering. So what I think I'll do is just position the cameras until I get Linnea set up, and then I'll run through how I've set things up with one of the camera angles. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. So there's the whole spiel. Watch that. So standard pillow, and then I have a small one for adjusting. And I have a body pillow. And then something for the arms. Okay, so that's kind of how that looks. And what I'm gonna, actually, let's do this. This will be good. So Linnea, have you come around to the side. Up on the table and then lay facing that way. And slide on in. Do that. Get really under that tree. And then let me take this out. See that? Right, that's a little. Look at this. You can take this on. Okay, so. So what I've done is double up the angle. I'm going to come into this one as a close-up.
Excuse me, Marva, would you please remute yourself?
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you for asking. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mute everybody on that one. Okay. There we go. Now we're on this camera. So a couple things to look at is that you want to get the neck pretty neutral. And she's on a little bit of a pitch, which is fine, because right now with the pillow heights that I have, without this little guy, she's too low. So I'm going to swap this out, put that in there. So this puts her in just maybe a little different angle. But if you have pillows of different size, you can set something up that allows the cervical spine into the thoracic spine to feel pretty neutral. Now everybody's going to be different, and perfectly neutral might not work for them. So it's a good question to ask. Put that pillow to the side. And the next piece is they want to have her back pretty straight up. Okay. The arm is supported, so she's not too far pitched, rounded that way, and she's not leaning back, falling off the table. And that's just kind of resting there as a neutral position. We'll come down to the hips. So, depending on the pelvic width, the space between the knees might vary. And right now I just have one pillow in between the knees, and she's fully supported. So nothing's gonna, she's not gonna fall off. All right. Again, you want the body to just be really relaxed there. And then the next piece, the test, is to just see how she moves. So with very little input, she starts to move. Okay. Oftentimes what I'll start with is I can lean my weight back and I have her get iliac crest and I create a little bit of space. You can see this here. Right? And then I'm going to take my thenar muscle. I'm just going to run along the top side of the spine with a little bit of a compression. And I can actually push or compress with the direction on top of the spine because it's just moving through this kind of hanging, I think they use the example of a suspension bridge. But it's not like she's on the table and the ribs are going to keep the spine from articulating in a 360 degree. But with an emphasis, my thenar is above the spine and I can just get this nice little bounce. And I can feel what's happening in the articulations as the ribs come in to the vertebra. Full hand on the back. I can come a little lower, but I would do that from the other side. As her, it's thin here, her waist is thinner, but as her shoulders are broader, so I can find below the shoulder or below the spine here, and I have the handle at the hips. And I'm just leaning my weight in. And I might just start with this. Because if you think about what we're up to, we're just creating these nice little mobilizations at the articulations. You know, the spine goes in, the ribs do this. Kind of this feeling, right? And it's beautiful. And it's easy. The scapula starts to fall off to the back. And if that were to start to dangle too much, you can just lift your arm and take it forward a little bit. And then that might change how what's accessible for me up here. And that would be just a real basic way to come at some sideline. Now, a couple things to note. Just as general principles. It's going to be freer here at this articulation than on the other side. Because this side's weight bearing, and the spine's kind of compressing here. Okay, so don't look for the same kind of movement. Wow, it's free up top here. I want to get that down here. You want to just be mindful of that, but still create a little bit of movement. So my compressions on the lower side might not feel or do the same thing that's happening on the top side. From this position, I can just go the other way. Let's see how that looks on the screen. Okay, cool. Yeah, so same thing here. I can be down here. And just mobilizing the low back, lengthening a little bit. just lean my weight in and use the pelvis as a handle. And I'm just guessing right now. So, and by working with the pelvis, what do I have a handle on? Everything that attaches to the pelvis. So as I lengthen here, I have the obliques, iliopsoas, rectus abdominis, and I can play around with how that might feel. Let me see if I can get a different angle here. So if I'm just playing around, my hands are on her, I lift, or I'm sorry, I lean in. And I'll get into more specifics. I had the pleasure of studying with Jack Blackburn as he was actually developing this work. And he was a genius when it came to coming up with ideas to work with the body. So quickly, I'm just going to come around to this side so you can see the bolstering here. More. See if we can get a wide view. There we go. So again, what I have just kind of on hand is a regular pillow. You can get them of different thickness. I like the idea of a body pillow as something that's stable. And in particular, when I rest the other pillow on top of this, it just provides a little bit of more of a platform. I've used a couple pillows, but that tends to fall over, or at least I've had those experiences. And this is just a little more of a stable setup. Okay. And again, we'll get into a lot of different side-lying stuff in the next session. Okay. And if you can excuse me 1 second, the wind and the rain has blown open my back door, and I'm just going to close it. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the other angle. There I am. So folks, with that, let's just do a little Q&A for a few minutes. Okay, some massaging moves, I see that. Oh, okay, Marva. Yeah, you'll absolutely get the video later. I've got a couple other you guys are exiting for them. Okay, all right, hun. All good. Well, I'll make sure that the next video is juicy with all kinds of things. If there's anything that each of you want to see, because you won't be able to chime in on the chat, take the time to leave me some notes, and I'll see if I can come back around on that. I'm just accumulating the input, and we're still going to cover everything that I'd like to, but if we can detail it and tailor it to the collective consciousness of the group, then we're going to come away with something really enriching.
So will you be doing some lower body side-lying stuff? Okay.
I will. I'll do that. I can do that next week when we're going to have like a whole session on some side-lying and reflex response.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to have that. So what I'd like to do today for the afternoon is go through the protocol again, get that really established, and then we're going to have a session where I spill out over the edges into some play sandboxy kind of time. And then we're also going to have reflex response and some more sideline.
When you do the breakout things, is that on the recording? How does that work?
You know what? I need to check on that. I don't believe it is.
I don't
The
think
breakouts
so.
are more for you to just connect with somebody to share your process.
Yeah.
And again, I added that in, but for some reason that feature didn't pop up. And more than anything, it's really to help you to stay on board with the homework. Hey, so the whole idea of this, the whole idea of life right now is to not do what we used to do, right? I mean, it's in spades. Everybody's got to change. And some of us are going to fall on the light, expansive side of the coin, and others are going to wind up wherever they decide to land. So this idea of stepping out of comfort zone and not repeating what we used to or defaulting to strengths, but really start to develop other parts of us is a key piece. And just to note, I've actually scheduled some friends of mine so that I can step out of my own comfort zone. So I'm going to be doing the same thing, and you're going to get feedback from me about me changing how I do bodywork to be part of this whole process and keep it authentic in a group expansion. But that's what the breakout session's meant to be. 5-minute chat with somebody and say, yeah, you know, this is my edge. But you can do that in private. It's not personally broadcasted. And I might have I have to see how many people are on the call and maybe, you know, do 1 or 2 in a breakout room, or not 1 in a breakout room. So here, go sit by yourself so you learn what you need at home. But maybe 2 or 3 people in the breakout room. Something like that. Yeah, go ahead, Marlene.
Yeah, I'm in the same Zoom with Marva in a little bit, but the afternoons, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join you, but I'll catch it on the what you send out to watch. So I appreciate it. This is wonderful. Thanks.
Super cool.
Marlene.
Thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Yeah, Marva.
Go ahead, Marva.
I just sent you a chat saying you and I could connect later to do our own breakout exercise.
Oh, perfect. Yes, that'd be wonderful. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, feel free to stay in touch with everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. So I think we'll pause here if we're feeling completed, and we'll reconvene at 1 or 10 o'clock PST. Or actually, there's somebody we have somebody from Australia in class. So we'll wave to her. So, all right, folks. See you in a little bit.